This week, we mark a new era of government in California. Open primaries and redistricting will fundamentally change the way Sacramento operates.
Unlike other states in which voters often vote in what's called a closed primaries, in California, all voters are voting in the same primary, and the top two candidates, regardless of their party, go on to the general election. This top two primary system was enacted about a decade ago as part of a larger budget fight. And the idea was to increase moderation in California politics. In many states, there are essentially two parallel primaries, one to pick the Republican candidate and one to pick the Democratic candidate. But generally in California, unlike in other states that are partisan primaries, every voter is voting in the same election. And so you can be a Republican and you can vote for a Democrat, or vice versa. You are really seeing a lot more efforts to promote a business-friendly Democrat from business groups that might have formerly supported a Republican. It could be a Democrat who's more sympathetic to charter schools. It could be a Democrat who's more aligned with the agricultural industry. It has really supercharged a whole campaign infrastructure that exists to try to promote more moderate Democrats. One of the best examples of how this sort of top two election gamesmanship works is in the 2018 race to elect a new governor of California.
Two sets of numbers could explain how the race is shaping up between Gavin Newsom and Antonio Villaraigosa.
California is a state where teachers' unions have a lot of political clout. The former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, was somebody who was a little more willing to buck that.
When students were stuck in failing schools, only one candidate for governor led the fight to turn them around.
Charter school interests spent millions of dollars to promote Antonio Villaraigosa, and then we saw Gavin Newsom's campaign spend money on an ad that was ostensibly attacking a Republican candidate.
Why is John Cox attacking Gavin Newsom for supporting common sense gun safety? John Cox stands with Donald Trump and the NRA.
But the language that it used was seen by Villaraigosa's camp as an effort to actually boost John Cox by making him more appealing in the eyes of Republican voters.
He has 34% of the vote. He will face John Cox, the businessman from Rancho Santa Fe, California.
I think anybody looking at how that played out, who sees the millions of dollars charter school allies spent against Governor Newsom and then saw a legislative package that charter schools have contested make it through, it's easy to see how elections have consequences.
I remember years ago, Senator Moynihan had said if they called it a reform, it's not. And this is not a reform.
We've seen both Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy criticize the system. There's also a criticism that for a system that was designed to be more representative of Californians, it deprives some people of a voice. You could see this when California last elected a U.S. senator. In the general election, Republicans had a choice between the Democrat, Kamala Harris, and the Democrat, Loretta Sanchez. There are also plenty of folks who think that this has worked out. One of them is Congressman Ro Khanna, who recently won his seat, in fact, by challenging an incumbent Democrat.
Well, let me tell you something in this country. These seats don't belong to these career politicians. They belong to the people.
He told me that if you look at the totality of California's reforms, it has led to new voices emerging, more women, more people of color, more independent thinking. And so here is somebody who in a previous era under a more party-dictated system may have had to wait his turn longer rather than launching a challenge to an incumbent. But in this case, he was able to get through, and he has since become really one of the more prominent progressive members of Congress. While we certainly have seen a lot of progressive policies emanating out of Sacramento as Democrats have tightened their grip, I think you have also seen that the most critical power dynamic in Sacramento is not the divide between Republicans and Democrats. It's the divide between liberal Democrats and more centrist, business-friendly Democrats who try to modify or block bills that they feel will have a negative impact on the state's economic climate.